Well, by the fruits you shall know them. I'm very interested in people, and I'm very interested in knowing what a person has done rather than what they're going to say they're going to do. Why do we judge people oftentimes by what they say they're going to do to us or for us? Let me give you an example. If you take your car in someplace, you have kind of defaulted to the business establishment as a reputable place. And so that's kind of an easy example, but if somebody comes up to your door and asks to mow your lawn, well, you're a little bit hesitant. Well, why is that? Well, it's because you don't know the person. That presumption, that assumption is that you don't know their past. Why would you marry someone unless you knew their past? You have assumptions that there's something that took place in the past that's going to happen in the future based on past practices. Isn't it interesting that sometimes in other fields we have a disconnect between that little paradigm? Let me give you a little example. Take policies, and generally this happens in politics probably more often than I'm aware of, but it can happen in other fields. But let's take another example, like K through 12. Well, everybody has their opinion on public education. What I'm trying to address here is, if a system continuously fails, it seems like all we're told at the next election is, well, we just need this amount of money and this amount of teachers, and it's all going to be better. But we never did take the time to look inside and find out, well, what in the world's going on? And so we disconnect ourselves from the guy wanting to mow our lawn, from K through 12, which is taking up 50% of the state budget, right, in Washington State. Let me give you a classic example of a politician and my paradigm coming from a sort of a Christian background. You know, GOP, I'm a Christian, I do the 10 Commandments, you know, good boy. Okay, so we really want to vet our pastors or whatever. You know, we want to make sure these guys aren't sleeping with the secretaries, but boy, when the GOP comes in, it's like Christ coming again. Roll out the carpet and bam, right? I mean, there is this disconnect. It's the same thing with the DNC. Oh my goodness, the state is God. You know, it's like they don't care about the criminal corruption that took place. You know, they do when they're going to marry the spouse. Why would a woman want to marry a man whose past was beating women all the time? But he comes up and he says, Wendy, I'm not going to beat you. I promise. I'm serious. I'm not going to do that. Well, what would she do? What would we think she should do? Get the heck out of Dodge. Okay, so here we go. Example. George W. Bush, who I voted for the first term. Let's take a look at, well, I won't give you the platform, but he did run on the party platform. If you look at the Republican Party platform, which I think is a reasonable platform. However, let's look at his past. The guy can't even run a business. He can't even hardly run a franchise. He's a drunk. His daddy was, I won't get into it, but the problem is he had some significant personal failures in his past. He promises to overcome those by just his words, and we just say yes. So we're not even looking at the character of a particular individual. And so what happens? He gets elected, and what are we to see? The highest deficit in recorded history. We're in wars, and he said that we were never going to nation build. Exact opposite. But because he's the GOP, we ain't getting a Democrat, I can tell you that. We're getting Georgie. So the fact is there's a disconnect. And oftentimes, including myself, back then, that is something based on fear. When you decide to vote for something that is a disconnect, it's because you're wanting to have that because you fear the other. And let me tell you, when you vote for lesser of two evils, guess what you get?
Good. You're good.
You still get evil. Now, page 2. Why in the world does let me bring this back to representative government. Why does DC continually get corrupt? I mean, why is that? It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican. The budget just keeps skyrocketing. How long did it take to win World War II? The biggest war in the history of the world? 4 years. We're in Afghanistan with the guys with a bunch of dirty nightshirts, and we can't get it done in 10? I mean, what's going on here? Right? We have some serious problems. No offense to those in Afghanistan. In conclusion, in my opinion, right now, bringing it home, we have 3 people, just my opinion, who are running for office. 2 obviously are in the paper all the time. One's this crazy old man who nobody cares about. But here's the deal. In defense of my position, I won't name names of who I want, but it's quite clear that if we were to take a value scale of past records, right? If we're going to take a value record of past records, well, in terms of a disconnect, meaning who would you hire to mow your lawn? Who would you hire to do your car? Well, who would you hire to run the government? Do you want someone who right now is the incumbent, has made Bill Clinton look like the truth teller from heaven? Would you like someone who is promising everything opposite that he's done in the past? Or do you want to maybe look into someone who has a 100% constitutional voting record? It's really up to you. I won't tell you what to do. But it is important that if you want to change things, especially up there or even local here, and you don't look at the character of people and their past, you will not change this town or DC, ever. And if your position is based that, well, I know that we need to do this, but if we don't do this, things will really get bad. That, from a Christian paradigm, I would say is not right, because it is a fear factor, and as Christians, speaking to those abroad, my personal opinion, it is the duty to stand up against Goliath when all else fails. And I adjure you, I believe my position on the topic is tenable. And lastly, by their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Thus, by the fruit you will recognize them. Mr. Toastmaster.